In 1238, Mongol executioners submerged a living woman into a vat of oak bark extract and lime. The room was silent except for the slow churn of liquid, thick and brown like the heart of a dying forest. Torches hissed against damp stone, and the smell of tannins stung the air. For the next 23 days, they kept her conscious while her skin slowly transformed into leather. Each sunrise crept through the cracks in the tent walls, turning her pale skin the same color as the dust outside. The guards counted time not by days, but by the rhythm of her breathing. But that's not even. The worst part, she was Genghis, Khan's wife, and her punishment was meant to echo through centuries, a warning to every woman who would ever dare defy the empire. The Mongols were not known for mercy. Their justice was as precise as it was brutal. Every act of defiance was met with a punishment that matched it in scale and symbolism. They didn't just kill traitors. They erased their memory, their skin, their name. To the Mongols, death was quick, but dishonor had to be eternal. This woman, known in whispers only as Lady Yasugen, had committed the ultimate sin. She had betrayed her emperor's trust. And betrayal, in the age of conquest, was treated like poison spreading through the empire's veins. The execution took place in Karakoram, the heart of Mongol power. It wasn't a battlefield nor a public square. It was a silent tent surrounded by soldiers, where the wind itself seemed to hold its breath. Before her stood the vat, a mixture of crushed oak bark, lime, and iron salts, the same chemicals used to tan animal hides into armor. The executioners stripped her of her robes, her jewelry, even her royal insignia. Every ornament that once proclaimed her as queen now lay in a heap of dull gold beside the vat, forgotten. The process began with ritual precision. They recited the names of Genghis Khan's ancestors, invoking the spirits of conquest to witness the cleansing of betrayal. Then, without another word, they lowered her into the mixture. The liquid bit into her flesh instantly. It burned not with fire, but with something slower, more merciless, a chemical hunger that ate through life one layer at a time. She screamed, and the sound seemed to shake the wooden frame of the tent, but no one moved. For the Mongols, silence was obedience. Even pain had to serve a purpose. A scribe in the corner dipped his quill in black ink, recording every detail, not for compassion, but for posterity. This was justice, preserved on parchment. Hours passed. The liquid cooled, and the smell of decaying tannin mingled with human sweat. Steam rose from the vat in slow, ghostly spirals. Outside, the campfires burned low, and the distant neigh of horses sounded like morning. When night fell, she was lifted out, barely alive, skin darkened. Rough to the touch, under torchlight, her body glistened not with blood, but with resin, as if the empire itself had begun to harden her into a relic. They laid her on a slab of marble, and the chief executioner began reciting the second part of the ritual. Let her skin be the armor of betrayal. Each day that followed was a new stage of the transformation. They would submerge her again, then hang her body under the desert sun. The tannins from the oak bark fused with her skin, tightening it, sealing it. By the 10th day, she no longer bled when they moved her. Her body had become its own prison. They fed her enough to keep her breathing, small pieces of bread, drops of water, forced between cracked lips. Every breath was a rasp, every heartbeat a drumbeat of defiance against nature. The guards whispered among themselves that she had once shared the Khan's bed, that she had whispered state secrets to a rival tribe. Whether true or not, no one dared to question the verdict. Above her, the sky stretched endlessly over the steppes, vast, indifferent, eternal. The same sky that had watched 1,000 executions now watched her. In Mongol belief, the spirit of the condemned wandered until purified by pain. So, they believed this suffering was mercy. By the 13th day, her eyes no longer closed, the lashes were stiffened by lime. Even the tear ducts had turned brittle. Yet the faint glimmer of life still clung there, a refusal that unsettled even the guards. She no longer screamed. The voice had dried in her throat, but her silence was worse. It made the camp feel cursed. The head shaman, concerned, advised the soldiers to finish the ritual quickly, but orders from Karakoram were clear. She must remain alive until the 23rd day, for the Khan's law decreed that a traitor's soul must feel every hour of her transformation, until her body no longer belonged to flesh, but to history. Night after night, the moon reflected off the vat like a blade. Each ripple carried the faint echo of her suffering, a sound that mingled with the endless wind of the steppes. And somewhere beyond the campfires, wolves howled. It was said they could smell the tannin and the blood from miles away. To them, the scent of punishment was the scent of power. The dawn of the 14th day rose pale over the Mongol camp. The wind carried the smell of ash and lime through the tents, the scent of judgment that no one could escape. A red horizon shimmered like rusted steel, casting the shadow of the gallows over the woman's resting place. The air tasted of iron, of endings. The executioners gathered again, silent and mechanical. Their faces hidden beneath furs, they dipped their ladles into the vat and poured the liquid over her body. Each splash echoed like a drumbeat of empire, slow, measured, and absolute. Steam rose again, thick enough to hide the trembling of their hands. She no longer flinched. Her nerves had long surrendered to the slow chemistry of death. Only her eyes remained alive, two dark mirrors reflecting the flicker of torches and the blurred shapes of her captors. The chronicler, exhausted, looked down at his parchment. The ink froze mid-stroke. He had written about 100 deaths before, but never one that refused to die. He paused, thinking that perhaps this story would outlive even the Empire. But he kept writing. The Khan demanded records, not thoughts. Outside, the soldiers sharpened their blades on whetstones. The sound was constant, like insects gnawing at metal. No one spoke of the woman anymore. She had become part of the camp's atmosphere, a warning carried on every gust of wind. By the 16th day, the oak bark extract had hardened her skin completely. It no longer bruised or tore. It was leather now, tanned, polished by agony. The texture glimmered faintly under sunlight, the color of desert dust and dried blood. It looked less like flesh, more like something forged. They hung her again under the steppe sun, where she swayed between earth and sky. Her hair, once black and lustrous, now clung in matted strands, stiff as rope. Crows circled overhead, drawn not by decay, but by the uncanny stillness below. To them she was neither alive nor dead, something in between. The guards began to avoid her. They claimed the vat whispered when left alone. At night, one swore he heard the sound of breathing, long after her chest had stopped moving. The others laughed, but none dared keep watch near her tent again. When the 17th day arrived, the shaman ordered another purification ritual. He burned incense of juniper and mare's hair, walking slow circles around the slab. The smoke curled like spirits rising from her skin, tracing invisible lines across the tent roof. Each curl seemed to resist the wind. As if reluctant to leave, the chronicler noted every detail, the hour, the chance, the stillness of her eyes. He wrote the final entry beneath the others, a line meant to close the tale. On this day, the queen's flesh has become eternal. Then he stopped. The pen quivered in his hand, because he heard it, a breath, faint, deliberate, one last rebellion against oblivion. That night, a sandstorm swept through the camp. The Mongols believed storms were spirits of the wronged. The tents flapped like wounded beasts. The torches went out one by one. Somewhere in the darkness, the vat overturned, spilling its black contents across the earth. By dawn, when the storm cleared, the woman still lived, barely. Her skin gleamed like lacquer. Her heart beat slow but steady, a rhythm that mocked the elements themselves. Even the shaman refused to approach her again. They knew the 23rd day was near, and by then, her transformation would be complete. The last week passed in near silence. No one sang. No one laughed. The only sound was the creaking of the wooden frame that held her suspended. Each groan of timber sounded like the sigh of a dying god. The steppe wind carried it across miles of emptiness where no one would ever know her name. On the 22nd day, she opened her mouth. No words came out, only the rasp of breath scraping against dried vocal cords. But those who stood near swore they heard a sound, not pain, but something closer to prayer. A whisper to the ancestors who had already turned away. When the final day came, the air was unnaturally still. Even the horses stopped moving. The executioners lifted her one last time and set her before the vat. The shaman raised his staff and proclaimed, "The body is finished. Let the spirit depart." The moment stretched, silent and endless. The torches burned lower, their light crawling over the hardened surface of her skin, a monument sculpted by torment. The chief executioner stepped forward, touched her shoulder. It made a hollow sound, like knocking on wood, like closing a coffin. Then, with a single motion, he drew his blade and sliced open her chest. No blood flowed, only the dark, stiff texture of treated hide. It shone under the torchlight, proof that even flesh could be conquered. The chronicler wrote the final words in the record, "The queen is leather." And with that, the ritual was over. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, pale and indifferent. The steppe stretched on forever, swallowing the last whispers of her name. But this was not the end of her story. For the Mongols believed that the spirit of a punished queen did not fade. It lingered, following the scent of oak and lime, haunting the men who had bound her. The executioners buried what was left of her body in a shallow grave outside Karakoram. No ceremony, no name carved in stone. Just a mound of dust over the stiffened remains of a queen. The soil there was gray and dry, the kind that swallowed sound and memory alike. The wind erased footprints before nightfall, as if the earth itself refused to remember what had happened. But even in death, her presence refused to vanish. Within weeks, strange things began to happen around the camp. Horses grew restless at night. Fires snuffed themselves out without wind. Men spoke of hearing faint creaks from beneath the sand, like leather tightening in the cold. Others said they smelled oak bark when no trees grew for miles. The chronicler, who had once written her death into the record, tore out the final page. He burned it, muttering that no story deserved to end like that. Yet as the smoke rose, he saw faces in it, one unmistakably hers, half-formed and watching. He dropped the parchment into the dirt and never wrote again. Weeks later, the Khan's army moved west. They left behind the tent, the vat, and the cursed ground. Only the wind remained, whispering through the empty stakes. Sometimes it sounded like her voice, faint, rhythmic, still breathing. Years passed, and yet, every time the Mongols conquered a new city, someone claimed to see her. A woman with skin like burnished bronze standing at the edge of the battlefield. Witnesses said she never spoke, but her eyes followed the soldiers until they turned away in fear. The legend grew quietly, spreading faster than any army. They called her the Leather Queen, a spirit of vengeance bound in hide. To the nomads of the steppe, she became both warning and omen, a reminder that even the might of empires can rot from within. In time, her story crossed deserts and mountains, whispered by merchants and monks. Some said her preserved skin had been turned into a drum used by shamans. When beaten, the drum's sound carried across impossible distances, a hollow, mournful thud that made horses rear in fire's gutter. The shamans claimed it was her heartbeat, still echoing through the world. Others told a different story, that her leathered body was kept in a hidden vault beneath the palace, a relic of divine punishment. Used to swear oaths of loyalty, the nobles who touched it swore allegiance to the Khan, but many died within a year. their skin marked with strange dark patches, as if the curse had been passed through flesh. Centuries later, when the ruins of Karakoram were excavated, archaeologists found shards of pottery stained with tannin and fragments of parchment describing a woman who was made into armor. No remains were ever found, but deep in one of the burial pits, they discovered a single piece of darkened hide, thin, smooth, unmistakably human. It had been treated with oak extract, and even after 800 years it did not decay. To this day, historians debate whether the story of the Leather Queen is myth or record, but Mongol chronicles are clear. A noble woman was executed by the method of tanning, and her name, struck from royal scrolls, was never written again. In the empire that conquered half the known world, silence was the only true death. The punishment itself, tanning of the living, was rarely used. It required patience, resources, and intent far beyond simple cruelty. It was not meant to kill. It was meant to transform. To the Mongols, it symbolized domination over nature, turning life itself into material. A person into an object, a soul into a weapon. Imagine it. A queen, once wrapped in silk and gold, ending her days encased in the very armor she helped forge for the empire's armies. The circle of conquest closing around her, perfectly and mercilessly. Over time, the story became a legend, and the legend became a superstition. Mongol mothers warned their daughters, never lie to a conqueror, for the Leather Queen still watches from beneath the steppe. They said that when the wind smells faintly of oak and ash, she is near, walking unseen between the fires of history, and even today, in the grasslands of Central Asia, travelers speak of strange noises at night, a creak like tightened leather, a whisper carried by the wind. If you listen long enough, you can almost hear it, a slow, steady breath, keeping time with the turning of the world. The Mongol Empire is long gone. Its cities turned to dust, its emperors to legend. But some echoes refuse to die, and somewhere, in the shifting silence of the steppes, the Leather Queen still waits, a relic of vengeance, preserved not by cruelty but by history itself.